Trains in India will begin travelling on the world's highest single-arch railway bridge.
And the bridge runs a full 1.3 kilometers over the Chenab River. And just to give you a sense of how high it is, take a look down there. That's the riverbed.
Trains are supposed to take you places, across countries, through mountains, over oceans. But some tracks were never built for comfort. They were built through blood, fire, and sheer desperation. From rails that cut through living markets to tunnels haunted by the dead, these routes hide terrifying secrets beneath their beauty.
I ride a commuter train every day. The difference is phenomenal in that aspect of it. It's a great train. Everyone's friendly, and it's you couldn't ask for a better scenery. You know, the scenery is out of this world.
And when you find out what's buried under one of them, you won't believe they still let people ride it. Welcome to Bangladesh. Here, trains aren't a luxury, they're lifelines. During holidays like Eid al-Fitr, demand explodes. And the trains? They become floating cities, on wheels, not inside, on top. Thousands of people cling to the roofs, the windows, the spaces between cars. No tickets, no safety rails, just survival. And why do they do it? Because they have to. Miss that train, and you might miss your grandmother's funeral, or your daughter's wedding, or your paycheck. Waiting isn't an option. Bangladesh's railway spans nearly 3,000 kilometers, but it runs on crumbling infrastructure. Every year, people are crushed, electrocuted, or thrown from overcrowded carriages. Still they ride, still they cling. The Mae Klong market in Thailand might be a dance, but in Bangladesh, it's a fight. One where gravity, speed, and desperation all collide on metal rails. And yet, somehow it works. Somehow they hold on, somehow trains arrive. But the deeper you go into this world of steel and motion, the more you realize. Every country has its own story of survival on the rails. Stories just like that of Thailand's Mae Klong Railway Market. Thailand's Mae Klong Railway Market. It sounds made up, a train that moves through a living, breathing market, but it's real. And it's one of the most surreal dances between man and machine still happening today. The tracks run straight through a dense stretch of vendors, about 500 meters long. They sell everything from dried squid to smartphones. And every few hours, a siren rings. Umbrellas snap shut, tables are dragged back, and seconds later, a train glides through, inches from the produce. Locals don't flinch, tourists do. They call it the choreography of danger, and it is. A single misstep? Fatal. But somehow, it never happens. After the train passes, the stalls slide back like puzzle pieces. Business continues. Fish back on the table, tourists back with their phones. It's not just a spectacle, it's tradition and survival. No fancy station, no barriers. Just raw coordination and trust. In most places, trains demand space. In Mae Klong, the people and the rails share the same breath. And as odd as that sounds, it's not the most extreme thing you'll see on this journey. Now, let's head north, where the ground doesn't burn, it freezes. Trains plowing through deep snow. In the icy frontiers of Canada, Russia, and Northern Europe, the threat isn't crowds or cliffs, it's the silence, the snow, the kind of cold that can bend steel. In these regions, trains are lifelines stretched across white wilderness. When blizzards hit, tracks disappear under snowbanks taller than houses. Entire towns vanish under white. And still, the trains are expected to run. How? Enter the steel whales. Massive trains with snowplows welded to their noses, barreling forward like tanks through frozen chaos. They don't glide, they blast. Snow shoots 5 meters high, crashing over platforms, swallowing signs, sometimes smashing into cars forgotten too close to the track. Tourists call it beautiful. Conductors call it survival. Inside the cab, visibility drops to near zero. Brakes slip. Every second is a judgment call. Make the wrong one and you're not just stuck. You're stranded, miles from help, buried under sheets of ice. In Siberia, Some towns only connect to the world through these trains. Miss one, and you're cut off until spring. Locals joke, the train doesn't take you home, it just gives you a head start. And that's just one story, because we're going even higher. Trains moving through the clouds. Now we climb, high above sea level, past the clouds, into thin air, where trains shouldn't even exist. But they do. And they run on tracks that look more like tightropes drawn across mountains. This is Argentina's train to the clouds, Tren a las Nubes, a route so extreme it brushes the heavens at over 4,200 meters. That's higher than some commercial flights cruise. But don't let the views fool you. This isn't a ride for the faint-hearted. Construction began in 1921. It took 27 years. Not because of laziness, because of danger. The terrain was too wild for traditional methods. So engineers rewrote the rules. Spiral loops, switchbacks, elevated viaducts that cling to rock like spiders to glass, 29 bridges, 21 tunnels, 2 full spirals. Every meter a battle against gravity, and then came the altitude. Oxygen thins as you climb. Passengers have fainted mid-ride. Emergency oxygen tanks are standard. And there's one rumor, the kind locals whisper, that in the 1960s, an entire car was evacuated when too many riders collapsed from altitude sickness. Official reports? Quiet, the mountain, loud. In 2005, flooding wiped out part of the track. The train stopped running for nearly 6 years. It took renovations, reinforcements, and stronger safety systems to bring it back. And even now, rock slides and flash storms threaten the line. Now let's move the trains called the Devil's Nose. The Devil's Nose. Locals call it Nares del Diablo, a jagged peak in the Ecuadorian Andes, where the air feels thinner and history cuts deeper. More than 2,000 lives were lost building just 12 kilometers of this cursed railway. It's marketed now as a scenic zigzag ride. But what tourists don't see? The bones beneath the track. Back in 1899, Ecuador had one dream, link its coastal port, Guayaquil, to the capital, Quito. But the Andes didn't care about dreams, especially not the Devil's Nose, a vertical wall of rock dropping 800 meters straight down. To climb it, engineers drew up something radical, a switchback system, forcing the train to reverse back and forth across cliff edges like it was cheating gravity. It worked. Barely. The problem wasn't just the math, it was the mountain and everything on it. Workers, most of them poor, enslaved, or deceived immigrants from Jamaica and China, were dropped into thick jungle where jaguars prowled, venomous snakes hid in the underbrush, and the air swirled with disease. Malaria, dysentery. Even the mountain itself fought back. Earthquakes undid weeks of work. Torrential rains swept entire camps into the abyss. They say the mountain didn't want to be tamed. By the time the railway opened, over 2,000 men were dead. Some say the real number is double that. But no one counted. They were buried in unmarked graves or not at all, swallowed by the jungle they tried to carve through. Today, tourists gasp as the train glides along the Devil's Nose. They marvel at the switchbacks, snap photos, smile. But underneath that steel lies a graveyard. The beauty is real, but so is the blood, and that's just one. Now dive down, way down. India's Chennai-Rameswaram Railway Bridge. At first glance, it looks like a calm stretch across water. But that surface? Deceptive. Beneath it lies one of the most dangerous rail routes in Asia. The bridge spans just over 2 kilometers, connecting the city of Chennai to the island of Rameswaram. But unlike other bridges, this one fights against cyclones, crashing tides, and winds that can rise without warning. Engineers knew this. That's why if gusts hit more than 58 kilometers per hour, all trains are halted. No questions asked. It's not paranoia. It's memory. In 1964, the Pamban cyclone hit. Winds screamed over 240 kilometers per hour. The entire bridge was torn away. A train full of passengers? gone. Over 200 lives lost to the sea. To this day, fishermen speak of ghost trains, lights on the water, rumbling sounds in the dark long after the last service ends. Stories, maybe, or something else. Locals believe the sea remembers. Yet the bridge still operates, not out of defiance, but duty. Pilgrims cross it to reach sacred ground, engineers maintain it with daily drills, and just when you think it can't get more extreme, wait. Because there's another place, where cliffs rise higher, where spans stretch longer, and where trains don't just challenge nature, they challenge everything we thought was structurally possible. Engineering giants. Now we enter a different kind of battlefield, not one of survival against nature, but a duel between ambition and physics. Start with the Chajiaotan suspension bridge. This thing doesn't just span distance, it stares down gravity. Hanging 350 meters above a deep-cut river gorge, it stretches for over 2 kilometers. Taller than the Eiffel Tower, and built faster than most people renovate a house. The challenge? The valley was too unstable for helicopters, so they flew the first cables in using drones. Wind currents were so wild, one wrong shift would have sent the cable and the drone crashing. But they pulled it off. Then came the cameras. Over 30 high-res, rotating surveillance eyes were bolted into place to monitor every twist, every strain, every movement of steel. And they finished the job in just 2.5 years. And not only that, they actually came in under budget, by millions. And yeah, that sent shockwaves through the global engineering world. But hold up, it gets even bolder. Next, the Longjiang Suspension Bridge, Yunnan Province. This monster holds the record for the world's longest single-span suspension bridge, using just one main tower. That tower stands 233 meters tall, holding up 154 cables stretched across a valley like an iron spiderweb. And they didn't hit pause, not even during a pandemic. Robotic excavators, tunnel-boring machines, AI-powered tracking. It turned a multi-year grind into a 4-month sprint. Anchors had to be drilled over 100 meters into mountain stone. No mistakes allowed. One loose bolt? Collapse. But the payoff? Game-changing. This isn't just a bridge. It's a critical artery in a 9,000-kilometer highway system that links Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand. What used to be a 90-minute detour is now a 2-minute glide. And with it, trade exploded, tourism followed, and villages once isolated in the mist now sell goods to the world. Now turn toward the Pingtang Bridge, the one with a story carved into its concrete. Its central tower, 332 meters tall, the tallest concrete bridge tower on the planet. But this isn't just about height, it's about heritage. The tower design was inspired by Hmong tribal dress patterns. Tradition fused with tension cables. Steel meeting storytelling. The price tag? Over $211 million. But it doesn't just look good. It's built to take punishment. Intense heat, corrosion, even earthquakes. And this bridge has a job. Pingtang is the only way to reach the FAST telescope, the largest radio telescope on Earth. Without this bridge, scientists couldn't reach the site fast enough. Meaning, discoveries about space, galaxies, and possibly life beyond? Delayed. So yeah, this bridge is low-key helping us explore the universe. Now look up, way up. Hovering in the clouds of Dahang Canyon is the Aizhai Bridge, a glass walkway connecting mountaintops. You don't just walk across it, you float. Underneath, a straight drop of 336 meters to the valley floor. The cables? 85 centimeters thick. Each one weighs up to 8 tons, and they were strung across peaks where even birds hesitate to fly. For locals, it cut travel time from 4 hours to under 1. For farmers, it brought tourism, cash, and a whole new life. But what if a bridge doesn't just defy cliffs, but slips under the ocean? A bridge like no other. Now leave the skies, leave the cliffs, dive down deep beneath the ocean's surface. where China pulled off something even veteran engineers said was impossible. The Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Stretching 55 kilometers across the Pearl River Delta, it's not just the world's longest sea crossing, it's a statement. At surface level, it looks like a massive ribbon of road touching 3 major cities. But beneath that, a story so wild it sounds fictional. First, the obstacles. Hong Kong's airport airspace meant the bridge couldn't rise higher than 150 meters. Any taller, and flight paths were in danger. Then came the shipping lanes, used by tankers over 300,000 tons. So engineers had 2 choices, build higher or go under. They chose under. The solution? A 6.7-kilometer undersea tunnel, buried nearly 50 meters below the seabed. They didn't just build across the water, they went beneath it. And not in calm seas either. The tunnel had to withstand typhoons, tidal surges, earthquakes, and daily underwater vibrations. Soft silt made the seabed unstable. Leaks were inevitable. Failure? Fatal. When they reached out to international experts, the quote came back so high it would have doubled the cost. So they didn't buy the blueprint. They made their own. Lin Ming, the chief engineer, didn't sleep for months. His team studied, tested, failed, retested. No playbook, no fallback. They created China's first ever immersed tunnel tech, something no one had attempted at that scale. When the first tunnel tube, 80,000 tons of steel and concrete, was dropped into place, the crew stayed on site for 96 hours straight. No hotel, no home, just scaffolds, tents, and adrenaline. Some later called it the closest thing to war a bridge can get. Over 500 patents were registered during the process. They built materials that flex with seismic waves, resist saltwater corrosion, and seal against high-pressure leaks. Even the ventilation system had to be engineered from scratch to push fresh air through 6.7 kilometers of buried tunnel in both directions without fail. And yes, there's an emergency exit. You just better not miss your turn, but the genius doesn't stop there. The bridge includes 2 man-made islands anchoring both ends of the tunnel. These weren't just plopped into place, they were built using 120 steel cylinders, each as tall as a skyscraper, filled with sand and gravel and slammed into the seabed like metal spears. The scale? Brutal. The precision? Surgical. It took 9 years to finish, and in 2018, it opened to the world. Now, what used to be a 4-hour ferry ride is a 45-minute drive. That's not just infrastructure. That's time travel. But as bold as this bridge is, there's still one more truth to face. It costs China over $30 million a year just to maintain. But they pay it because letting it fail would shut down a major artery of trade, tourism, and tech. But the mystery doesn't end here at all. Tracks of terror. You'd think by now we've seen it all. Bridges buried in the sea, trains gasping for oxygen above the clouds, markets folding for locomotives. But there's another layer, the hidden tracks, the silent killers, routes that never made headlines but took just as many lives. Some cursed by nature, others by history, and a few so remote they almost feel made up until the steel tells you they're not. Start in the frozen north, where gold fever met ice. The White Pass and Yukon route cuts from Alaska into the Canadian Yukon like a scar across the spine of the mountains. It was born in the fire of the Klondike Gold Rush during the 1890s. But it wasn't gold that made this line famous, it was the death toll. This narrow gauge track climbs over 3,000 feet in just 20 miles. No tunnels, just sharp curves, wooden trestles, and drops that vanish into icy valleys. Thousands of desperate men worked this line, many without coats, some without boots, freezing solid where they stood. Avalanche zones gave them no warning. Dynamite blasts went wrong, rocks fell like bullets. Some were crushed, others disappeared. To this day, they say if you ride the train during winter and look out just right, you'll see old boots frozen into the mountain, picks sticking from the ice. Ghost tools left by hands that never made it home. Now jump across the globe, New Zealand, peaceful, clean, scenic. But on the Gisborne-Napier line, danger doesn't hide in cliffs or storms. It rolls across a runway. This railway is one of the only ones on Earth that crosses directly through an airport. At Gisborne Airport, trains and planes literally share the same piece of ground. No bridges, no tunnels, just rails laid across tarmac. A moving train halts a flight. A descending aircraft stops a locomotive. It all comes down to timing and one radio signal. It sounds insane, but it works. Barely. A single error, a delay, a missed call from air traffic control, and you've got a disaster measured in seconds. Then head to Norway, to the fjords, to the Flåm Railway. Only 20 kilometers long, but it drops 867 meters from the Myrtle Mountain Station to the sea. It's one of the steepest standard gauge rail lines on Earth. The angle? 1 in 18. That's nearly vertical in train terms. And there's no cog system, just brakes. Lots of them. The Flåmsbana has 5 different braking systems, including magnetic plates mounted right onto the rails. In the early years, those brakes weren't always enough. More than once, trains shot down the mountainside and slammed into the Flåm terminal at full speed. Engineers used to call it the elevator from the sky. And locals? They speak of the huldra, a forest spirit that lures engineers off the track. Some still leave flowers near tunnel mouths before the train descends, just in case she's watching. Now go south, to Sri Lanka. The Kandy to Ella line is what travel blogs call the most beautiful train ride in the world. And it is. Tea plantations, misty forests, bridges that vanish into clouds. But beneath that beauty, horror. These tracks were laid in colonial times, using unpaid or underpaid labor pulled from local villages. Every monsoon season, the hills shift. Landslides come without warning. Tracks vanish under mud. And it was on one of these lines, in 2004, when beauty turned to catastrophe. The Boxing Day tsunami roared in from the Indian Ocean and hit a coastal train known as the Queen of the Sea. Over 1,700 people died. There were no warning systems, no alerts, just waves swallowing steel. Entire cars became tombs. Survivors said they saw locals running beside the train, waving, screaming, begging it to stop. But it didn't. It couldn't. By the time the water came, it was too late, and finally, Pakistan. The Bolan Pass Railway is carved through Baluchistan's unforgiving terrain. It dates back to British rule and slices through dry mountains and stone valleys, where flash floods and sabotage are equally deadly. Armed guards often ride with the train crew, not for show, but for survival. In 2006, a bomb went off on the tracks. Dozens died. Others were maimed. Still, the train kept running. It had to. For isolated villages deep in the range, this isn't a luxury. It's the only way to reach a doctor, a teacher, a bag of rice. Temperatures here can hit over 50 degrees Celsius. Winds blast dust hard enough to peel paint. Entire sections of the rail are rebuilt each year, devoured by landslides or erosion. Near the Kojak Tunnel, legends say Afghan workers died during a collapse in the late 1800s, buried alive, and now their spirits guard the pass. Some engineers say they've heard tapping on the tunnel walls when no one else is around. So what do all these forgotten routes have in common? They weren't built for beauty or fame. They were built for survival. They connect people not for luxury, but for life. And the price paid to carve them into the earth still echoes today. If that left you speechless or made you see these routes in a whole new way, leave a comment. Which of these railways or bridges shocked you the most? Would you ever ride the train to the clouds or stand on the glass walkway over Dahang Canyon? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because what you've just seen, that's only the surface of the world's most unbelievable journeys.